Hey, fifth grade. Today for writing workshop, I have a mini lesson that I'm calling A Movie Behind Your Eyelids. This is a two-part lesson, so today we're just going to focus on part one. So let's get started. We've already talked a lot this year about the importance of sensory writing, of prose and poetry that a reader can see, hear, and feel, even smell and taste. Today, I'm going to focus on sight and sound, on how writers can use descriptions of visual and auditory details to slow down their stories and bring them to life for their readers. As readers, many of you have made comments to me about the novels you're enjoying this year, along the lines of, "It seemed as if it was really happening," or "I felt like I was there in the story, seeing and hearing what the main character was seeing and hearing," or even, "I forgot I was reading a story, it seemed so real." I think these are the moments we love best as a story reader, when the prose is so thick with good telling details that the writing disappears and we revel in the experience of a character. This level of richness in story writing isn't accidental. The author has slowed down the important moments in a story by describing them fully, inventing or remembering the details of sights and sounds that will make the story feel real to a reader. I think one way to make your stories literary is to close your eyes, make a private movie of your story behind your eyelids, and then use language to capture what you saw and heard in your mind's eye. Let me show you what I mean. Below, you will find what I would call a chunk of thin, dead description. It's from a draft of Mrs. Atwell's short story about Leah, a seventh grade girl who arrives at school one morning to discover she's been dropped by her circle of friends. This paragraph is supposed to describe the initial moments of the rejection. Follow along with me as I read it aloud and see if it's possible to put yourself into the story with Leah as you do when you lose yourself in a good novel or memoir. Leah, version 1. When Leah got to school that morning, she couldn't find Dee and Marty, but when she went into homeroom, they were there, except they ignored her. Then she found a mean note they'd written about her. She went to the bathroom and cried. Leah wondered if her other friend Carrie would reject her too. Could anyone see or hear any of this? Do you understand what I mean by thin, dead description? Things are happening here. Leah gets to school and can't find her friends. They ignore her. She finds a mean note. She goes to the bathroom and cries. But none of it is visual or auditory. It just lies there, dead on the paper, too fast and too thin to take on a life of its own. On the next slide, we'll look at another version of Leah's moment of crisis. It's a fourth draft attempt of the same incident, but this version depended heavily upon the approach I'm going to teach you today. As Nancy drafted, revised, and polished, she continuously closed her eyes, concentrated hard, and imagined the action, one frame at a time, like a movie, behind her eyelids. Read along with me again and again. Try to put yourself in the story with Leah. Leah, version 2. Leah brushed her bangs away from her forehead one last time and checked her watch. She was going to be late for homeroom. Where were they? She clutched her books against her sweatshirt and tapped her foot. "Come on, guys," she muttered. When the first warning bell rang, she sighed. Were they both out sick? Crud. She looked up and down the sidewalk one last time, then headed for homeroom, disappointed that the plan she hatched that morning wouldn't come true. School felt different when her friends weren't there, like a color movie shown in black and white. Leah made it to homeroom just as the second bell, the real one, sounded. The first thing she saw as she slipped through the door were Marty and Dee sitting next to each other in the front row. They were whispering with their heads together and didn't look up when she came in. She felt surprised, then hurt. "Take a seat, Leah," Mrs. Orr said when the bell stopped ringing. "You're late." Well, almost late. Marty and Dee still hadn't looked her way, but Leah could see that Marty was blushing as she stumbled to an empty desk 2 rows behind them. She felt her own face getting hot. Were they ganging up on her about something? Great. She leaned forward and whispered, "You guys, where were you? I was waiting." Guys, guys? Instead of answering, they kept their heads together. Marty's red hair against Dee's blonde. You guys, she demanded, not bothering to whisper this time. What's going on? The back of Marty's neck glowed bright red, but still she didn't turn around. That's enough, Leah, Mrs. Orr warned. It's almost time for announcements. She sat back in a daze. Now Marty and Dee broke apart and sat rigidly, eyes facing front, as the voice of the vice principal boomed from the intercom. They were acting as if she were invisible. She tried to remember Friday, the last time they had been together. What had she done to make them so mad at her? Marty, she whispered when the intercom clicked off. What's wrong? The only reply was the straight line of Marty's back. Suddenly, Leah realized that the boys on either side of her were watching this show with interest. She opened her math book and pretended to read. She could feel tears starting behind her eyes. Don't cry, she commanded herself. Don't let them see you cry. When the bell rang to end homeroom, Marty and Dee bolted through the door as if they were shot from a cannon. Leah got to her feet slowly and picked up her books. Her face felt as if it were on fire. She spied a crumpled piece of paper on the floor at the front of the room and recognized Marty's handwriting. It looked like a note. She hesitated, then scooped it up and jammed it into her jeans pocket. She practically ran to the first floor girls' bathroom, where she locked herself inside one of the stalls, leaned against the door, and pulled the note from her pocket. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. Dee, did you see her hair today? How about that sweatshirt? B.O. or what? She is so weird. Right back soon, Marty. Marty, I can't believe we ever hung out with her. Run for it when the bell rings, or else she'll keep on bothering us. Leah started to cry. Huge tears, baby tears like Evie's, rolled down her cheeks. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a bad dream, one of those just before the alarm nightmares. She and Marty and Dee had plenty of arguments, but nothing like this humiliation. Because of what? Her hair? Her sweatshirt? It was so stupid and unfair. Did they expect her to go home and shower and change her clothes or something? Would they be happy then? Then it hit her. They had planned this. They hadn't met her before school because at some point over the weekend they had talked about her and made a decision. It wouldn't have mattered if she had washed her hair that morning or worn a different shirt. They had already decided not to be friends with her anymore. Leah ripped the note into pieces and threw them in the toilet. She flushed it again and again until every scrap was whirled away. Then she banged the door of the stall open and avoided her face in the mirror, hurried from the bathroom. She had to find Carrie. She had to know if Carrie was in on this too. Were you able to enter this story? Could you see it and hear it in your mind's eye? It covers the same plot points as the first version, but what are the differences in terms of writing? Let's take a look back. So, in the very beginning, we get sights and sounds. We see her brushing her bangs away from her forehead. We see her checking her watch. It says she was going to be late. Then she clutched her books against her sweatshirt and tapped her foot. So just in those few sentences that I've read back to you, we have seen a whole lot. We see exactly what she's doing. We see her actions, and then we also even maybe hear her foot tapping. And then she says something out loud. She's talking to herself, so it says muttered. Come on, guys, she muttered. And then she sighs. So there are sights and sounds. I'm not going to take us through the whole version too, but I think you can see just even in the first paragraph how drastically different this version is. So I'm going to jump back here. It is significantly slowed down and detailed, visual and auditory. It's just better writing, period. I'd like for you to try this technique to make a private movie as you compose your own memoirs and short stories. Go ahead and turn to page 27 in your ELA reference folder to view the notes from this lesson. If you need to go get it, you can push pause and then pop back in. Make a movie behind your eyelids. This is a technique for slowing down important parts of narratives and creating images that readers can see and sounds they can hear. How to do it. 1. Close your eyes and concentrate. 2. Imagine the scene you're going to write as if you're making a private movie in your mind. See and hear yourself and the characters in action in real time. Open your eyes and try to capture the page exactly what happened in your mental movie. The small details, sight, sound, one frame at a time. When drafting, close your eyes and make a movie, then capture the specifics of your own or your main character's experience. When revising, close your eyes and see and hear more and richer actions, reactions, gestures, facial expressions, dialogue, tones of voice, colors, and other visual details. When polishing, close your eyes, envision the scene, and check it against the verbs of your text. Does the language you use to evoke character and action measure up to the images you saw and the sounds you heard in your movie? This is hard work, guys. This level of concentration will probably make your brain hurt. I know it does mine. But the payoff is guaranteed. When I can see and hear the action in one of my stories, I'm more than halfway toward the goal of my reader being able to see and hear it too. Again, this is a technique for drafting and revising and polishing. For example, I'll close my eyes and make a movie when I want to capture a first draft of basics of what I've experienced. If it's a memoir or if it's a short story, what my character is experiencing. Sometimes, though, I revise by closing my eyes, then trying to see and hear more and better details and dialogue. And I always polish by closing my eyes, envisioning the action again, and checking it against the verbs in the text. Try this. I promise no one in the workshop will look at you funny if we notice you sitting over a draft with your eyes squeezed shut. And I promise to do everything I can to ensure the workshop is quiet enough that you won't be distracted from making your movie. All right, guys, that's it. If you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Let me know. I love and miss you. I hope this is helping you with your memoir. I realize that we just finished up our first one, but I'm looking forward to seeing this applied to your second and your third memoir. All right, guys.